Good evening. Glory and honor to the Father Yahweh, the creator of heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, the God and Father of Messiah, Yahweh Shai, of his chosen people, the nation of Israel, which is now scattered because of unbelief and disobedience and worshiping other gods, but now is awakening. Glory and honor to the Father Yahweh, who told us from the beginning, and Messiah Yahweh Shai, who also told us from the Father, from the beginning of these things. Glory and honor to their name. Greetings to the 12 tribes, as aforementioned, scattered into the four corners of the earth because of disobedience and worshiping other gods, but now returning to our God, Yahweh, and Messiah, Yahweh Shai, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Greetings. And to the 144,000 preordained of the Father to represent Elijah and Moses, bringing the message to God's people in Babylon as the forerunners of the return of Messiah to establish the kingdom given him from Father Yah. Greetings. And to the precious Gentiles of Japhet, of Ham, and of Shem, that are not of the bloodline of Jacob, who have been scattered through slavery, but who have come out of the slavery of sin and lies and darkness through the light given from Messiah through his chosen awakened people. Greetings. Greetings to the chat, Yafi, Superstar, Brother Mark, TL, my beautiful wife, Zadok Yahoo, Stephen Kelly, all of my brothers and my sisters around the earth preparing for the outpouring of Yah's Spirit soon to be given, and the follow-up of the return of Messiah aforementioned. Greetings to all of you. Wednesday nights are always set aside for current events, and as always, there's always current events that point to prophetic utterance and help us be prepared. Brothers and sisters, there's a lot of, now we're in the information age, really. There's an age of information. Shalom, Brother Ricky Boy. There's an age of information. And at this time in the history of the planet Earth, I think you will agree, more information is being disseminated than at any time in the Earth's history. More information, both positive, negative, true, and false. There's bits of information in the billions being disseminated on large mass scales. But all this information does not help us like the Bible does. And I know that sounds like a crazy statement to those that don't know this book. But this book is the only book on planet Earth that is telling you what's about to happen. It's the only book on planet Earth that tells you what's about to happen and tells you how to prepare for what's about to happen. To tell you, among other things, that there's going to come an end of the kingdom that we're now in and the establishment of a new kingdom built on righteousness, and how to prepare for the kingdom of righteousness soon to appear. It's the only book that not only tells us these things, it gives us the times of those things so that we know exactly where we are in history and where we're about to go. The prophetic utterance given in this book is what makes it separate from all other books. There's a lot of books that teach morality. There's a lot of books that teach about good behavior. There's a lot of books that even might give you some history or some knowledge, but none of them give you all of that with the prophetic utterance of what is happening and what's about to happen. Read your Bible. It will help you get through this time that is filled with information, but a lot of it confusing information. After all, this book names the system that we're now in, Babylon. Babylon comes from an ancient term in the Bible from Ham's grandson, Nimrod. And he founded a place called Babel, from where we get Babylon. And Babel came about because the Father Yah confused the languages of the earth at that time. And Babel means confusion. Revelation shows us this system that we're now in is called by the Father Mystery Babylon. And if you're not careful, you will be thrown all over the place in confusion because of Babylon, which is why, again, I point you to this book. Because, brethren, let me tell you something. We're living at a time in Earth's history where guessing about what's about to happen can cost you your life and even your eternal destiny. Whereas if you follow the path of light that the Father has given us, you'll be safe. And as I mentioned to you many times, there's, for example, in terms of where on the earth you should be, right? Where physically you should be located on the earth. You can think about places that you want to be located. They might be nice places. But if it's not where the Father would have you be located, you see, the Father is Alpha and Omega. He's in the beginning. He's in the present. And he's in the future all at the same time. There is no being, entity, or anything that can put you in the right place the way he can. And if you're not in a place he has ordained for you to be, it could cost you. Whereas if you're in a place where he picks for you to be, though you don't understand it, it's the safest place for you to be. Because he knows the end from the beginning. And he knows where we should be. And that's just one example. Where we should be. Who should we be with? Who would we be married to or not married to? How we should live in terms of what foods we should eat, what foods we should avoid. Because it's not as plain as it used to be. Because Babylon is tricky. To show you how tricky it could be, like I mentioned to you, I listen to a lot of Malcolm X, a lot of his old stuff. And the reason I do is because I am of the belief that in spite of maybe his religious errors, for lack of a better word, he was ahead of his time. And he was, and I like to look at brothers in terms of the earnestness of their desire to help their people. The earnest of desire. In other words, not for money, not for control, not for worldly power, just a love for his people. Now, Malcolm X made a lot of mistakes, obviously, and the mistakes cost him his life. But he was ahead of his time. And in spite of all of that, the Father gave him a vision, gave him a sight for the future to teach us things. One of the things he talked about, two things I'm going to mention here. One I put in the description box about the Bandung Conference in 1955. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But one of the things Malcolm talked about was he was in a meeting. And in this meeting, there was him. There was a former congressman from New York, Adam Clayton Powell Jr. And there was what they called the Big Six. The Big Six: Martin Luther King, Whitney Young, Powell, a guy named Powell, all of these guys that were, prominent. They called them the Big Six. They were prominent among the Hebrews, otherwise known as Black people in the United States. They were propped up, and these were the supposed leaders of the Black man in America, the so-called Black man in America. I can't remember all their names. There was Ricky Young. There was Ricky Young. There was Whitney Young. There was Martin Luther King. There was several of them. I can't remember all their names, but most of them were connected either to the SNCC, to the Southern Leadership Christian Leadership Conference, or some organization like Congress of Racial Equality, and not Abernathy, he wasn't one of them, but it was Whitney Young. It was the CORE, the guy that led CORE. I forgot his name. He was a brilliant academic. They did a movie about him too. There was Martin Luther King, of course. There was a few of them. There were 6 of them, and they had a meeting. Because if you look at the civil rights movement, there's a documentary called Eyes on the Prize. Well, during the course of this documentary, they did a segment on the civil rights movement in Albany, Georgia. Make a long story short, Martin Luther King and all of those groups tried to desegregate Albany, Georgia. But Albany, Georgia was waiting for them, and they had a plan for them. And they failed. The Martin Luther King's movement failed in Albany, Georgia. And it caused an upheaval among the civil rights movement, among the leaders in the civil rights movement. And Martin Luther King, at the end of that program that he tried to desegregate Albany, Georgia, when he was leaving, they showed a newspaper ad, and he said, "I'm under orders to just leave town." He came out of court and he just left town. Okay. And at that time, the Big Six was fighting each other. One of the Big Six was the leaders of the NAACP. I forgot that cat's name. He was also one of the Big Six. He was leader of the NAACP. And he started accusing Martin Luther King, because Martin Luther King needed money. So he went out and started traveling to different cities and did rallies and collected money for himself and for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. So after he collected this money, the NAACP and the Congress of Racial Equality and some other people were complaining that he was raising money, but they had spent money getting him out of jail and he hadn't paid them back. This is a true story. And so they were fighting each other. At the same time that they were fighting each other, right? A. Philip Randolph, James Farmer, John Lewis. There you go. Thank you, Castle King. There you go. Whitney Young, Roy Wilkins. That's right. It was A. Philip Randolph, Roy Wilkins, James Farmer, Whitney Young, Martin Luther King. What was one other guy, but it might have been John Lewis. I don't know if he wasn't there yet. He wasn't at that level yet. But it was a Big Six. It was them. That's right. Whitney Young, Martin Luther King, James Farmer, A. Philip Randolph, Roy Wilkins. That's right. That's right. So they fighting each other over money because they're running out of money. This is a true story now. This actually happened. In fact, I'm gonna put the link in the description box. But they fighting over money. So when they were fighting over money, people at the grassroots level, starting in Albany, Georgia. There was a young brothers in Albany, Georgia, that was all in on Martin Luther King, but they had started their movement. Not Stokely. This is before Stokely. But they started their movement without Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King came in, was supposed to finish it. But when Martin Luther King left and all the crowd and the cameras and everything left Albany, Georgia, these young brothers started talking about marching on Washington themselves. And that word spread. It went through Albany, Georgia. It went to New York. It went to Harlem. It went to Detroit. It went to places like Virginia. It went to little towns in Virginia that was majority Hebrew. And they started talking about marching on Washington, laying down in front of the Capitol, jamming up the business, laying down in airports so that planes couldn't land. This is what they was talking. So when Kennedy heard about this, he called the big six into a meeting and he told them, you guys need to call this off. You're going too hard, too fast. You need to call it off. And the big six let Kennedy know, we can't call it off because we didn't start it. This is not of us. So then Kennedy said, oh, it's not of us. These people going ahead of us. Kennedy didn't know who these other people were. These were grassroots, local leaders. So then Kennedy got slick. So what they did, they had a meeting. Kennedy said, okay, if you're not in the movement, we're going to put you in the movement. And what he did, he got a millionaire Caucasian man named Currier, Stephen Currier, a millionaire. And they set up a nonprofit organization with the purpose of raising money. And they had all of the organizations. They had A. Philip Randolph, Whitney Young, James Farmer. They had all of these guys, Martin Luther King. They had all of them join this organization. Stephen Currier put up $800,000 and promised to divide it between the six of them. And they set up the March on Washington. And then he promised them 700,000 more when the march was over. Now, if you recall, like during Eyes on the Prize, John Lewis wasn't included. And this is how I know, because John Lewis had a speech that he wanted to give. He was at that time very young, a college student, and he was the head of the SNCC organization. But the people that actually funded the march was Stephen Currier and John F. Kennedy, and all of the people and this is what they said. It was leaders from the Jewish community, Ashkenazi Jewish community, leaders from the Catholic Church, leaders from the labor unions, the people that put Kennedy in power. They wrote the speeches. And John Lewis almost didn't give the speech because he wanted to give his own speech, but they gave him a script. And we found out also, Malcolm brought out, that Burt Lancaster, the actor, his speech was the speech James Baldwin was supposed to say, but Baldwin wouldn't read the script. So that everything from Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech at that day, everything was scripted and controlled. And then those six each got $250,000, which at that time, you're talking about 63, that was a lot of money. That was a lot of money now, but then it's got to be like $1 million, $2 million a piece. So that's what the civil rights movement was. It was a sellout and a setup to keep people from really going crazy in this country and using the religious leaders to keep everybody calm, nonviolent. And if you notice, when Malcolm X said he was going to take the United States up on charges before the UN for violating the human rights of the Hebrews, well, so-called black people, that's when he was murdered. At that time, Martin Luther King started to change. And when Martin Luther King started to change, this is how you notice it. I gotta put this speech in there too. He got a 4-minute speech. I got it saved too with Malcolm X's. The Malcolm X, what I'm telling you about is the house Negro versus the field Negro. If you ain't heard that one, you gotta listen to it because it's on point. But Malcolm X's death woke up Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King started waking up and he started talking about, the difference was Malcolm X never considered the U.S. government his government. Martin Luther King was hoping it would become his government. And he kept including himself. But later on, you would know Martin Luther King said he was fearful that he integrated his people into a burning house. Okay. I'm going to put both of them One of them is only 4 minutes long. One of them is like 20 minutes long. I'll put them both in the description box today. But that is just giving you an example of how the Bible shows us that the children of Yafet will dominate the earth in the last days. Now, let's talk about a more recent thing. But before we do, let's look back at Revelation chapter 13 so that we can see what the Bible says is about to happen and we can understand. Because, brethren, like I said, if you're not watching the Bible, if you're not watching the word, you'll be confused. You will. Okay? You'll be confused. So let's look at Revelation 13. Now, let me give you some heads up, as I normally do, for all you that might be new to this thing. Revelation 13 talks about two entities, two beasts. The two beasts represent nations, okay, or governments. Put it even better, represent governments. The first beast is the government of the Vatican. Let's take a look at that. Revelation chapter 13. And then we did a whole study on Revelation. We do it almost every year. So I know I must have did it last year at some point, but I can give that to you when you need it. You know, we did every single chapter from 1 to 22 as we do with every book in the book of Revelation. And, you know, we can give you that and you can get it. It's no problem. We don't charge anything for it. So you just let me know. I'll give you the link for it. But let's read Revelation chapter 1, and let's start at verse 1 and go from verse 1 down to verse 3, and just to give you the first beast, which is the Vatican. The Vatican is a government. The Vatican is not a religion only. It's a religion and it's a government. It receives and sends out envoys and ambassadors because it's its own country within Italy. Started that way in 1929 with the Lateran Pact. The Lateran Pact created a country within Italy called the Vatican. Okay, so the Vatican City is a country. So here we go in Revelation chapter 13 from verse 1 down to verse 3. Revelation chapter 13 from 1 to 3. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. Now, the 10 horns are representing the 10 divisions that are under control of the earth. Right now, they're called the G10 of the UN. Okay, look up G10. The UN has several subsets. There's a G20, there's a G7, and there's a G10. Look up the G10. You'll see what that represents. All of these represent either the exact countries or replacement for the countries that were once the 10 division of the old Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, over 500 years ago. So you'll see the replacements are the United States, Canada, and Japan. All the rest of them are original. Okay. So this is the Vatican right here. Then, so the Vatican started in the 6th century. Okay. Which is really, you know, if you're not brainwashed, you understand from reading the Bible. That's when Christianity started. There is no religion called Christianity in the Bible. There is none. I defy anybody to find it. All people are going to do is see the three times in this entire Bible where the word Christian is used. That's not a religion. If I was to ask you, is Christianity a religion? 99 out of 100 people are going to say yes. There is no Christianity religion in the Bible. Messiah didn't create any Christianity religion in the Bible. He just didn't do it. The word Christian, when you look it up, is a follower of Christ. That's not a religion. That's the follower of a person. Christ is a person. And the word Christ is a word that the Greeks use for the word Mashiach, Messiah, which is the original term for the Messiah. That's the Father's anointed one. Okay? And if you look up the word Christ, you will find it says this, epithet for Messiah. Now, when you hear epithet, what do you think of? Especially you Hebrew. When you hear the word epithet, what's an epithet? Is that a positive term or is it a negative term? When you hear epithet, so we've heard of racial epithets, have we not? And we know them because we've been called them. There's racial epithets. So when you look up Christ, it's an epithet for Messiah. Now, some people say, well, epithet could be positive. Not in this context. It's what Greeks called Messiah. Okay? And I can go further, but I'm not today, because that's not the point today. But my point is that there's no Christianity in the Bible. There's no Judaism in the Bible. Judaism was created in the 7th century by Ashkenazis in Europe who had come to the religion of Edomites. And they called it Judaism, as if it came from Judah. Messiah wasn't no practicer of Judaism. When you could look all through this Bible, you will never see anything called Judaism. You will never see Abraham, and you can read it through now, create any religion. Abraham did not create a religion. We're studying Genesis now. Abraham was promised to be the father of a nation, not the founder of a religion. And there's a huge difference. Okay? So Christianity is not biblical. There's no Christianity in the Bible. There's no religion of Christianity. There's no religion of Judaism. There's a nation of Israel that had a God leading them, that had a God that chose them. That's a whole different thing. Now, Christianity was started by the Roman Catholic Church as an institution. The institution you have now as Christianity started with the Roman Catholic Church. And all of the churches that are Christian are broken off from its original mother, Rome. That's why they were called Protestants and reformers, because they were trying to reform Rome and protest Rome, their mother. And they all got spanked. That's the truth about it. Now here, Revelation chapter 13, you'll see a second nation or a second government that arose after the 6th century. A young nation that would rule the earth. Notice Revelation chapter 13 again, beginning at verse 11 and going down from verse 11 down to verse 13. And I beheld another beast or another government coming up out of the earth. And he had 2 horns like a lamb. And he spake as a dragon. Dragon is the devil. The lamb represents Christ. This verse says it had 2 horns like a lamb. It looked like a lamb. But within it was a dragon. What is it that looks like a Messiah, but is really not? It's Christianity. What nation is a Christian nation, but not just that? Verse 12. And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him. What Christian nation exercises all the power of ancient Rome and causeth the earth? That is, it has power over the entire planet. A Christian nation that has power over the entire planet earth causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was he. And he doth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. Great wonders and fire from heaven. That sounds a whole lot like bombs. Now, That's what the Bible is telling us. And then it goes on to tell us what this nation is doing and going to do. So you have a nation, a Christian nation, that acts like it's nice and flowery, like white Jesus, but is really working under the power of a dragon. Is really working like Satan himself in deceiving the earth and looking for power and worship. Revelation chapter 13, verse 14. Now, what is this nation going to do? And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. Deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. In other words, are nations afraid of the United States? Do they have reason to be afraid of the United States? Oh, somebody's going to say, how much aid do we give to all of these nations? We'll talk about that in a moment. But my question is, does anybody have reason to fear the United States? Is there anything in history that would tell you the United States could hurt you if you don't pay attention or listen? I think the Japanese would agree. Hiroshima and Nagasaki would agree. We're going to talk about more agreements in a moment too. So, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had a wound by a sword and did live. The last time you seen image in this contest where the whole world was supposed to be worshiping an image, that was in Nebuchadnezzar's day. That was in ancient Babylon, where Nebuchadnezzar told everybody, worship an image in the image of Babylon and in the image of Nebuchadnezzar. Head of gold became the whole image, and he said, worship this image. Here, the United States is telling the earth, let's make an image in honor of Rome. It's a religious power. It's a worship. Notice what it says. Verse 15. And he had power to give life unto the image, that the image should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. The image is Christianity. See, Catholicism is its own Christian institution, but all the offshoots of Catholicism is what we call now evangelical Christianity. That's in the image of Rome. They all are. So you're going to spread that, and then they will allow, this is how they also do it. They do it internationally. This is how they do it on the international level. They have the people like the SDAs, the Mormons, the Jehovah's Witnesses, the Baptists, spreading their gospel throughout the earth. And they share that with the Muslims and with Judaism, because those are what they call, on an international level, the three Abrahamic religions. And none of them Abraham had anything to do with, but they have named him and used his name for their religions. Image to the beast. And another place they're called the beast, the dragon, and the false prophet. Anyway, and he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the image, or the number of his name. Let him that hath wisdom, let him that have, here is wisdom, let him that have understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666, 3 sixes. The beast, the dragon, the false prophet. The beast is the Vatican. The false prophet is the United States in its image. The dragon is obvious, Satan. The beast, the dragon, and the false prophet. Now, this is what's going ready to happen. They already have a one world government. It's not coming. It's already here. It's not coming. Already here. One world government. Oh, and people thought they were going to escape the dollar by going to, Bitcoin. No. They just use more, they have more means of locking you down on a worldwide currency. That's all that is. You still have a worldwide banking system. Worldwide. Okay? It's already here. It's not coming, it's here. You already have a worldwide government based in the United Nations and NATO. You already have it. It don't have to come, it's already here. Okay? Let's take it now to the misdirection. See, brother, if you're not watching this, then you don't know what's going on. See, there's this buffoon. They call most Caucasian people white, so-called white people. They're really children of Yafet. This is an interesting children of Yafet, because children of Yafet generally are paler skin. Sometimes they have a little bit of melanin in what appears to be melanin sometimes. But this child of Yafet is orange. And he's the biggest buffoon you've ever seen in the White House. And this week he's getting indicted. This buffoon is getting indicted. See, this buffoon right here, it shows you proof. You ain't voting for no president. Presidents are selected by the real people in power. Presidents are chosen. And then they create a system to make you think you're voting for them. And so while everybody's attention on the indictment of this buffoon, in Niger is a small country in Africa. Small country, Africa. There was a coup. The people in Niger voted for a president. But the military was led by a man, and I put this already in the description box. The man's name was Brigadier General Musa Salou Bamou. Musa Salou Bamou led a coup, and they overthrew the government. Now, you ought to know by now who's behind that, right? Well, just to help you out, let me say his name right. Musa Salou Bamou was trained by the United States. He was trained by the United States. And the United States has a multi-million-dollar military drone base in Niger. But wait a minute. Niger, people of Niger, they speak French. France is the original colonizer of Niger. Well then, I don't even have to tell you, but let's follow it through. Now, this is why everybody's eyes is on this buffoon. This is going on at the same time. So, French were the original colonizers of Niger. Okay, you could always tell the original colonizers of the African continent because of the languages they speak. So, the French, all of the nations in Africa that speak French, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, Mali, Niger, colonized by the French. The ones of Angola that speak Portuguese, colonized by the Portuguese. The ones that speak English, colonized by the English, and so on and so forth. Or the Belgians, or the Dutch, South Africa. So Niger originally colonized by the French. Now, what does Niger have that the children of Yafet want? Niger has a lot of things, but they're one of the poorest countries in the world. But they got a couple of problems. Should I say the children of Yafet have a couple of problems with them? One of the problems the children of Yafet have is their birth rate. You see, it takes 1.9 births per woman for any class of people to survive long term. If you produce as a people, like say the Mexicans, just using that as an example, if they produced less than 1.9 babies per woman in Mexico, eventually they would cease to exist as Mexicans. Okay? If they reach below 1.7, 1.6, there's no turning back. Like, in other words, they will cease to exist. In the United States, the birth rates among the children of Yafet is 1.6. There's only one state, one place in the United States where the birth rate is 1.9. That's in Mormon-led Utah, where people be having multiple wives. That's the only place in the United States where the birth rate is 1.9 or more. I think it's 2.1. Every place else is below. And as a nation, it's below, which is why you're seeing more immigrants come. Same thing in Europe. Multiple countries in Europe below 1.6. Italy, Finland, Norway. That's why Germany, that they're so low. That's why you're starting to see them let immigrants in. Even the people of the land don't like it, but the scientists know they won't survive. Well, let me tell you something. In Niger, what's the birth rate? 7.1 children per woman in Niger. 7.1 children per woman in Niger. That's one of the problems they have. They can't have you outbirthing them like that unless they're going to make you slaves, which brings me to the second point. Niger is the 6th largest producer in the world of uranium. Now, there are 5 other countries that produce more uranium. Kazakhstan is the biggest producer of uranium by far. They produce half the world's uranium. And then you have Canada, Namibia. There's a couple of countries, 5 countries that are ahead of Niger. But problem is, the European Union and France in particular get most of their uranium from Niger. You see, it's not just that these other countries outproduce Niger in uranium. It's the cost. See, if you control the country, your cost of getting that precious mineral is less. See, if they were to go to Kazakhstan, which is probably Russian control, if they were to go to Canada, they'd have to pay more for the uranium. You see now, brethren, that you can see that the earth is getting hotter. Everybody's recognizing this. So they're trying to get other sources of electricity aside coal. They're trying to get other sources of energy aside coal, aside oil. So they're using uranium and nuclear power because it's supposed to be cleaner, than these other ones. So that's France. France is moving toward a lot of uranium for its power, its energy. And Niger knows this. So you have now this coup. And when you look at the military coup that happened just last week, a lot of the people, they were burning the French embassy. They were telling France, get out of Niger, right? But at the same time, a lot of the people of Niger were waving flags, not the flag of their country. They were waving the Russian flag. Now, what do we got now? We got the United States with bases there. The French wants the uranium. Russia wants to take over. And so what do we have? You have an African nation having resources that several of the children of Yafet want. And they're controlling the African nation and fighting over it. This is happening, and I'm just using Niger as the most common, most recent example in the last 2 weeks, this one. But this has been going on forever because, well, at least 2,000 years. And why? Because the Bible tells us that Rome is the beast. Rome is from the children of Yafet. The United States was taken over from the Indians by the children of Yafet. The 3 Abrahamic religions were created by the children of Yafet. So, brethren, what we're seeing is a classic case of misdirection. The media got us focused on the orange clown while they're trying to steal assets in North Africa. And they are stealing. Anytime you see a coup or some sort of revolutionary act, you can know it's the children of Yefet. Usually the United States has their hands in it. If there's assets involved, they built $100 million facility, military facility in Niger. The United States did. They trained the brigadier general that just ran the coup. No, Russia's not one of the four carpenters. No, Russia's not one of the four carpenters. In fact, let's look at that, Akawan Banya. So that's a good point you bring up. Let's look at it. Let's look at it. We know that there's four powers in Daniel, and we know those four powers. And Zechariah is talking about the same four powers. And the here is what differentiates the powers. Are you ready? Let's look at it. Zechariah chapter 1 talks about the four carpenters, right? So Zechariah chapter 1 and verse 19. Actually, let's look at verse 18 and 19. Zechariah chapter 1, verse 18 and 19. Notice what it says here. Because again, this is what show us what's important to the Most High, which is what we need to know, right? Because the Most High is getting ready, as he has shown us, take care of all of this. First, I want to bring up another point after this, but this is a good point Akawan Banya brings out. So let's look at this. Zechariah chapter 1, verse 18 and 19. Then lifted I up my eyes and saw, and behold, four horns. Horn represents power. So he said, four horns, what they represent. And I said unto the angel that talked with me, what be these? And he answered me, these are the horns which have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. So this is what these powers represent. These powers, these four powers, were powers that had a hand, a literal hand, in taking us off the land at different times. They scattered Judah, they scattered Israel, and they scattered Jerusalem. Now, Russia didn't do that. You understand? You got me, Akaran Banya? Russia didn't do that. What four powers did that? There's been a lot of powers on earth, but only four scattered us. Scattered us. The first one to scatter us was Babylon. The next one to scatter us after Babylon were the Medes and the Persians. The third power to scatter us were the Greeks. And the last power to scatter us off the land for good was Rome. That's how you know who they are. And Daniel is the second witness that brings that out in Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7. Okay, and Zechariah tells you why. Because there's been many powers. The United States is a world power. England's been a world power. Russia's been a world power. China's been a dynasty. But there's only four that scattered Israel and Judah. Those four. They scattered us. Now, speaking of the scattering, and this is why, brethren, again, let's go back to Jeremiah. Let's get a couple. I'm going to give you two witnesses for Jeremiah chapter 23. Jeremiah chapter 23. And again, let's start at verse 5. Jeremiah chapter 23, verse 5, and go from verse 5 down to verse 8. And I want you to notice this part about where we'll be coming from and who's bringing us together. You see, the state of Israel that now exists had most of their people come from Europe, Eastern Europe, and it was the UN that brought them together. Okay? But look at this one. Jeremiah chapter 23, from verse 5 to verse 8. Jeremiah 23 from 5 to 8. Thank you, Akawan Banya. Behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that I will raise unto David a righteous branch, and a king shall reign and prosper, and shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. In his days Judah shall be saved, and Israel shall dwell safely, and this is his name, whereby he shall be called Yahweh our righteousness. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that they shall no more say, Yahweh liveth, which brought up the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. But Yahweh liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country, and from all countries whither I have driven them, and they shall dwell in their own land. So, Yahweh's righteousness is Messiah. Messiah is going to bring us and gather us from all countries where we have been scattered. Messiah is going to do that. And so what does that tell you? At the time Messiah does this act, we will be coming from all different countries. Does that make sense? We won't all be gathered in Africa when Messiah returns. Okay? That's why I say, listen to where Messiah will have you go. Don't just go to Africa because Ghana is saying, I'll make you a free citizen. Go where the Messiah and the Father lead you to go. Because if you go somewhere you ain't supposed to go, you're going to find yourself in trouble. Well, you don't have to be. But wait a minute. I said two witnesses. Isaiah chapter 11. Again, Isaiah chapter 11. Notice what it said. And now, actually, I'm going to give you a third one. Isaiah chapter 11. Going to begin at verse 10. Isaiah chapter 11 from verse 10 to verse 12. Watch carefully. Isaiah 11, 10 through 12. And in that day, there shall be a root of Jesse. That's Messiah again, tribe of Judah, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. So the Gentiles are going to seek after the root of Jesse, not Christianity. That ain't the root of Jesse. Israel. Judah is the root of Jesse. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yahweh shall set his hand again the second time. See, just like in Jeremiah, they mentioned Egypt. That was the first time. Second time, what's going to happen? To recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria and from Egypt and from Pathros and from Cush and from Elam and from Shinar and from Amath and from the isles of the sea, mostly coming from Africa, but coming from all the places of what we now call the Middle East, as well as Africa. And the isles, that term is used for the Gentiles. Remember what it said in Genesis chapter 5. By these were the isles of the Gentiles established by their nations. So we've been scattered all over, right? And look at verse 12. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations and shall assemble, this is different from the Gentile, shall assemble the outcasts of Israel and gather together the dispersed of Judah from where? From the four corners of the earth. So Messiah is going to gather his people at the end. We will be coming from the four corners of the earth. We'll be scattered from everywhere. And we're scattered from everywhere. That's why I say it's going to get hot. It's going to get, excuse my French, it's going to get hot as hell here in the United States. It's going to get hot as hell here. And I'm just not talking about the temperature either. It's going to get hot here. It's going to be what Fat Joe used to say, it's going to get hectic. It's going to get hectic up in here. And so some of us going to be in this pot. Some of us going to be out of it. But we're going to come from different places of the earth. One more. One of my favorite ones is in Zephaniah. We done saw Zechariah, but let's look at Zephaniah. They're not related. Zephaniah chapter 3. There's Micah also. That's right. Zephaniah chapter 3. Zephaniah chapter 3. I'm going to begin at verse 9. Wait. I'm going to begin at verse 8. See, this is telling us what's about to happen. Okay? Zephaniah chapter 3. I'm going to begin at verse 8 and go down to verse 10. Zephaniah chapter 3 from verse 8 to 10. Therefore, wait ye upon me, saith Yahweh, unto the day that I rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms to pour out mine indignation. He's going to get the kingdoms to come together. That's under the mark of the beast. All the nations come together. And we've already seen that. And he said, what's the purpose of him allowing that? He's going to pour upon them mine indignation, even my fierce anger, for all the earth shall be devoured with the fire of my jealousy. For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon the name of Yahweh, and to serve him with one consent from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, my suppliants, even the daughter of my dispersed shall bring mine offering. See, that tell you where we went through, where most of us come through. And from there to the four corners of the earth been scattered. That's what's about to happen. And it's all set up. See, the gathering together of the nations, already here. You see, back in the day, I mean, those of you that, let's say if you're at least 50 years old, even 40, but let's say 50 years old. So if you're 50 years old, you was born in 73, it's 2023. Do you remember people traveling, like especially like average people, traveling to all the nations you've seen them travel to now? Like you get your passport, you can almost go anywhere on the earth. I've seen people talking about, I'm going to visit 100 countries before I'm done. Just average people. Why is that? The Most High is allowing all the nations to agree. So you can leave the United States, you could go to China, you can go to Ireland, you can go to Poland, you can go to Russia, you can even go to Cuba, you can go anywhere you want to go. Because all the world is under one government already. You just gotta need a passport. You can go to any of these places. Okay, you can go any of them. Okay, but the hottest spot is gonna be the US of A. Okay, it's gonna be the hottest spot. And because this is the lamb-like beast. And the Bible say, with regard to the lamb-like beast, we just saw it, the Bible said he's going to set up the mark and stop you from buying and selling. And you know the word indignation? That he said, I'm going to pour my indignation on the nations. Let's look at that again in Revelation chapter 14. Let's look at that again in Revelation chapter 14. Revelation chapter 14, beginning at verse 9. Revelation chapter 14, beginning at verse 9 and going down to verse 11. Revelation 14 from 9 to 11. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast. Remember who's setting that up now? If any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand. Who's setting that up? The lamb-like beast is telling the earth to create an image. The same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of Yahweh, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they have no rest, day nor night, who worship the beast and his image. And whosoever receives the mark of the name. It's going to get hot right here. This is where it's all starting. This is where it's beginning. You see, brethren, they already got these people that's in power that you don't see, the billionaires and corporate leaders, and they already got it set up. All this theater that you're seeing is just to make you think you have something to do with it. See, I feel really bad in a sense because the biggest fools are the children of your faith that believe in these buffoons. They trust their buffoons because they're cousins, but they don't realize their cousins just doing you. They just doing you in. They don't care about you. They don't care about you. They just want power. But see, when you follow the book, you would know that. You would know that. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the only one we could trust. It's the only one we could trust. Okay? So, while they doing their game of misdirection, keep your eyes on Yah's word, because it will keep you clear and that you see what's going on. So they're using this misdirection to go take more minerals, more power from the continent of Africa. Okay. And not just does Niger have uranium, but it also has gold. And from what, and if you look in the description box, I put a link in there from Democracy Now! And they had this woman that studied the whole region, that whole big region of northwest Africa, said there's minerals all over those countries. And that's why you had other countries say, if somebody attacks Niger, we're going to make it a declaration of war. You had 2 or 3 other countries in Africa said that. And then you had the rest of West Africa saying, we're going to put sanctions against them because they don't want to upset their peoples. Yeah, so that's right. They bring in democracy. And it's interesting. The United States already planted there. France is going to lose its foothold there. And Russia is going to come in. Can you imagine the United States and Russia? You know this is not going to go well. So, brethren, It's all happening right now. Okay. And at the same time, let us not forget our role. Our role, brethren, is for us to be sealed by the Father's Spirit. The Bible says the angel of Yahweh encampeth round about them that fear him and delivereth them. Okay? He sends his angels to keep us in all our ways. His word and his spirit will guide us the way we should go. He will keep us in the midst of the chaos that's now on the earth, and will get worse as time goes on. It's going to get worse. Okay? That's what we know. So don't get caught up in the foolishness. This really, it's entertainment. When I look at it as entertainment, honestly, when I see these things happening, because you already know they done already chose who they want. The rest of the game is really to get the people to think they voting for somebody. But the choice has already been made. Okay? Choices have already been made. So they're using this whole game with this orange buffoon to just cause a distraction while they do what they do. But it's okay. The earth belongs to Yahweh and the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. For he hath founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods. Who shall dwell in the hill of Yahweh? Who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart. Let us get from the Father, Yah, through Messiah's blood, the clean hands and the pure heart. Because that's what's going to cause us to inherit the real kingdom that's going to be here in just a few years. May the Most High bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, brother. And before I go, please remember Brother Imana Prakash. Y'all know he comes in the room, Brother Imana Prakash. His wife, they found some lumps in her lungs. She had some cramps. He took her to the emergency room a couple of nights ago, and they found 3 lumps in her lungs. They don't know if the lumps are cancerous or benign tumors. They're trying to wait to see if they shrink on their own. So please remember Imana Prakash and his wife in prayer. There's him, his wife, and his little kid. He got a little boy, cute little boy. Just remember them in prayer, if you would. Praise the Most High. Shalom.